Okay, well, it says we're live, but I don't see it up there yet, so it's probably just taking a few seconds to click in. Let me just pop up and see if I see it now. Let me look on my phone here. Don't want us not to do this, the whole thing, and not be live, you know?
So
do you remember it went right right on for me the last time, Michelle? So, we are. Okay.
I see it. It says it.
Yay! Okay, perfect. All right. So, hey there, everyone. I'm April Norris, and I am kicking off the second season of my podcast. Of course, they make me crazy. And I am so excited to have on Wellbeing Strategist and passionate mental health advocate, Michelle Dickinson. Hey there, girlie.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. So she is also a TEDx speaker and a published author of a memoir entitled Breaking Into My Life. So, really excited to have you. I've been kind of stalking you. I found you on Clubhouse just because we have a somewhat similar story. So, those of you watching right now, just know that this podcast will be uploaded to Apple Podcasts in the next few days. If you can't stay with us live, we sure hope that you do, but at least you'll know where you can find it. And then also it'll still be posted on Facebook and on YouTube, both. So you can watch it there as well. Just depends on how you like to do it. So Michelle, you're doing great work by partnering with company leaders with different companies to bring them a psychological resilience program that you created. And I want to talk to you about that, but I first want to start off with the reason you care so much about other people's well-being, and that happens to come from your mother, caring for your mother, your bipolar mother, and which is what your book is about. Again, that's called Breaking Into My Life. So start by telling me a little bit about your early relationship with your mom.
Sure. And again, thank you so much for inviting me on. And I can feel that we are like sisters from another mister based on what we went through, right? It's amazing how that works. But
it does, yeah.
So my mom was bipolar. I have early memories of her when she was well. I think that there was like a turning point in her life where the strain and maybe past trauma all sort of caused her to start exhibiting signs of bipolar disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And so she probably from, I guess, the age of 4 or on, I remember her starting to be manic, or like finding her sitting on the couch crying for hours. It was a bit of a roller coaster for me. As you might know, as a child, like the one thing we need is consistency and predictability and routine. And my mom was anything but consistent. So I never knew the mother I would come home to. Some days she would be in a good mood. Some days she would be angry with me and I didn't know why. But that like shaped me because it taught me compassion. It also taught me firsthand what it's like to love someone, how punishing it can be to love someone with a mental illness, how we put our own needs on the back burner so that we can do whatever we can to keep peace in the home. And that was my life. That was my childhood, my young adult life, and even my adult life, just trying to do what I can to help her. So yeah, so that's really the reason. And honestly, not something I ever thought I would do anything with. It was just sort of what happened. I was able to find myself a good job. I was able to go to school, and never really spoke about it, because as a little girl, we kept those things a secret. We didn't really want anyone knowing what was going on. And then someone asked me about it when I was working in my corporate job. I told the story. And then the next thing I know, I was nominated to give a TED Talk about it. So I'm talking about this now. So yeah, so then I told the TED story. I told my story on the TED stage, and there's something really beautiful that happens when you tell your story. It just gives other people permission to tell theirs or to feel less isolated and alone in their journey. And so that was remarkable and very pivotal for me because I got the power of going first and talking, which led me to write my memoir. Because I said, if I could do this in a 10-minute TED Talk, what could I do if I wrote my memoir? So I wrote my book, and that sent me on my way.
Did it? So I read an excerpt from your book, and I think it was called Tears, was the chapter. And the way you wrote it, and I wish I would have printed it out, was so, it hit me in the gut, in the chest, in the heart, in my whole body, from my toes to my ears, because you had talked about how excited you were to go to school that day, how you had a new outfit and you had a boy that liked you. Yeah. And, you had this assembly that you wanted to go to, and you knew that your mom was kind of on a roller coaster, not kind of, she was, because you got up to go potty in the middle of the night and all the lights were on downstairs, and she was, frantically cleaning the house, or no, you said crocheting.
Yes.
Wide awake.
Yeah.
And I remember those nights or days where she wouldn't sleep, and that was what was going on with your mother. And you thought to yourself as a little girl, how much longer can she go without sleeping? And it's amazing how long they can go without sleeping. It's like they get superpowers. And it just crushed me because I remember her frantically cleaning out the kitchen, and just pulling everything out. And, I'm going to do my crafts. And then she'd have everything laying out, on the floor. And it would lay there for weeks and she wouldn't touch it. It was more like they just want that something to do with their hands and, to try to keep their mind settled. But then again, what I think really killed me by reading that, or just really resonated with me, is that you heard her down in the kitchen speaking to your father, saying, please stay home with me today. Please stay home with me. I'm so lonely. I shouldn't be alone today, or I don't want to be alone. And she would talk about, my mother would talk about how lonely she was all the time. And even though we were there for her, when we were there, she wasn't there. Meaning, if she, like, I drove one time, Michelle, 14 hours because my mom called me to say how lonely she was. I got in the car, got my dog in the car by myself. I had just been working. I was working in television news, and I had a very crazy schedule because I anchored the morning show. I got in my car, drove 14 hours from Memphis, Tennessee to Cleveland, Ohio, because she didn't want to be alone or lonely, and she slept the whole time. I was there.
Yeah.
Like, son of a bitch, know. Yeah. And that was as an adult, and you still get so upset that you do these things because you love them, but it puts yourself and your own mental health at risk. And it just gets to be just so daunting sometimes, and you want to just scream, I hate you and I hate your illness. Essentially, we don't hate our moms, right? We love them, but it gets to be that point where it's like, and so how did you deal with that? I mean, you said you started to see your mom's illness come out about 4 or 5 years old. I thankfully had a little more time with her before her illness kicked in. I had it until about 15, and that's when it started to really roll through. But, for someone that is sitting back and listening to us, what were some of your coping mechanisms? Because your mom was violent though too, right? I mean, I didn't have a violent mom. She became agitated at the end of her life, but
Yeah.
So you were stuck with, and I hate to say the word stuck, but with a mom that was bipolar, but also abusive.
Yeah.
And at the end of your chapter, Tears, you say, I knew what I was in for because you knew she was ticked off that day.
Yeah.
And so what was that about? Did she intentionally hurt you, or was it something that she did out of like just,
Yeah. There's a saying, April, that goes, the hurt others. And I think that, I don't necessarily, I think I've forgiven her for the most part. I won't forget the abuse, because there was abuse, and she was definitely absent from what I needed, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but I think as a little girl, I was extremely resourceful. I found the love and the attention and the support in other ways that I wasn't getting at home. And I think that we underestimate how resourceful children can be if they need it. So I made it a point to find that love in my grandmother and my aunts, and even in my girlfriend's parents. And so it was definitely one of those things where I would find myself in scenarios with my mother where I was being consumed into her sadness. Like there's a chapter in the book where I talk about having to sit with her, and she would just cry and sleep and cry and sleep over and over. And I think I'm an empath. As an empath, I would absorb that sadness, that deep, dark sadness. There's nothing you can do to pull them out of that.
Yeah.
That is so deeply rooted in their illness. And so that was hard. I think that was probably the hardest aspect, is being with someone, being around someone, and not being able to take the pain away from them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I spent, my mother had me at 15 and a half, almost 16. So she had me very young. And I feel like we grew up with each other. And that's just, I lost my train of thought. I can't remember what I was going to say. But
it's hard. I was just saying, it's hard because it engulfs us. It sucks us in, and it's not like an adult caring for another adult. As a little child, you're looking up to that adult figure, and you're following their lead.
And I think because, and this was the point that I was going to make, is that I would resent her.
Yeah.
I resented her for a long time because I felt like we weren't enough to make her happy. Yeah. And, about 15 is when our family really started to get better in regards to, she had been married to my stepfather for a while, and he adored her, unlike my biological father, who was abusive to her. And they never got married. They were just teenagers. And so, thinking back, it's like, what's wrong with you? You have, a great husband, you have 3 healthy kids. We all love you. So I thought we just were never enough. And I also thought, and you probably thought this too, Michelle, that she wasn't trying hard enough. She wasn't trying to get better. She wasn't trying to, she wanted her pills more than she wanted to do anything. She was addicted to pills. And, but thankfully, I think what hurts me so much is that I grew up with seeing that beautiful side of her, where she was a hardworking mom. She'd come home and, she'd take us to the beach, and she was always smiling. And then all of a sudden at 15, when I'm in my teenage years and I'm going to, proms and dances, and she was still there and had very good days. but that's when I started to, and I think it was very confusing because back then, as you know, we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have people talking about this.
Right.
And it was quiet. It was hush hush because it was damn embarrassing.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. I have stories in my book about, thinking my mother was stable enough and I could bring someone home. And then, oh my gosh, she wasn't. And now I have to try to explain this, and kids can be mean, friends can be mean if they see something that's not, aligned with what they think to be okay. So really, really hard. But, you said something I wanted to mention. I was very resentful and very angry and very, I don't know, I guess angry and resentful for many years of my mom because of my mom. And because, it was our job to keep peace in the home, walk on eggshells, not create an upset, not create a nervous breakdown, do whatever we needed to try to keep peace in the home. So all of my needs would go by the wayside. And then I would hit the rebellious teen years, and that was a whole other can of worms. Like for me, I didn't want to be home. She was very strict. But then I wanted to go away to college, and she wasn't having any of that. She wanted me home under her thumb, basically being there for her. So I harbored a lot of anger and resentment, and it wasn't until I did the work to start to heal that so that I could let that go and live my life, because, I that no longer was serving me, sort of saying, well, if you grew up like I grew up, what does it matter? I mean, we all have stuff we've grown up with, but I went through clinical therapy. I did a lot of self-discovery work like Tony Robbins and Landmark. And I was able to reach a place of forgiveness and compassion and try to step into what life would have been like for her, and to try to raise a daughter and navigate a mental illness. So in the back of my book, there's an epilogue about how ultimately all of this now serves me in the work I do. But I couldn't see it for the longest time because I was so focused on the effects that her mental illness and her behavior was having on me. And when you focus on the effects of that, there's no space for compassion or to try to understand what life was like for her.
No, absolutely. And, I don't know if because I grew up watching some of the things that she had to endure. And, like you, because she did have me so young, at 5 years old, I knew that there was something very wrong, with it, and that this was not how things should be. Because she was in an abusive relationship, and so it's I think there came a time where maybe it was that drive home, after that 14 hours, that long drive home, where it was just like, April, throw your hands up in the air. She has done the best that she was able to do at that time. And she's doing the best that she is able to do, at that moment, when that happened. And you just gotta love her. And, you don't have to love her, but I mean, I did. And it's not you. It has nothing to do with us. And that's what we have to, make sure that we're saying to ourselves is, this has nothing to do with me. Their actions does not mean that, because you probably felt the same way. You tell somebody your mom is bipolar, like a boyfriend, right? You tell your mom, they're probably like, damn.
Oh yeah.
She did too.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my goodness. It's so true. Yeah. But for the longest time though, and your story about the 14-hour drive just so resonates, because nothing was ever good enough for my mom. Like, she would call me crying that she missed me, she didn't see me, and when was I going to give her grandchildren? And oh my God, the layers and layers of guilt that she would just lather on me. I'd be like, oh. And I remember driving home from spending like hours with her. She lived about 2 hours from me at the time, and crying the whole way home because no matter what I would give her would never be enough. And I was depleted. I was so depleted. Like at the end going, I cannot give anymore. And I remember a therapist saying, you need to create boundaries. You are losing your own mental health over trying to keep her happy. And that was when I learned boundaries. That was when I knew that I had to put some boundaries in place, even though the repercussions of those boundaries were not going to be pretty. She was going to not be happy with me. I did it. And it was the best thing I could have done. And I recommend that to people all the time. If they love someone with a mental illness, you have got to take care of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and that's such a big deal because you and I had the luxury of being able to step away to get a breather once we realized that was probably the best for everyone, because she would also get nervous when I came around too. I think that has something to do with the illness. And she'd get super nervous. I don't know if it's because she thought I was judging her, or I just wanted my mom, I just wanted her. And, so I wasn't judging, but again, I was resentful, but I never ever said to her, I hate you and your illness. I always said, I don't understand it. I don't understand why you do the things you do, But the question for you, while I don't forget about it, because I do have that brain where I'm like, poop, it's gone. Was your mom and your father, did they stay together, and how did he deal with this? And the reason I ask is because I thought about my father when you and I were talking about, being able to detach and to do boundaries.
Yeah.
I would go for runs, and when I was living at home, I would go for runs so I wouldn't lose my shit. And then I'd be able to come back with a whole different, feeling about the things that, about her sitting on the couch and just smoking and, in a dark room. And everything I think I do, Michelle, is because of the way I was raised with her. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I've always, have done very, things that like owning a fitness studio and things of that sort. But in regards to your father, was he able to create boundaries? Did they stay together? And how was that?
My dad was amazing. He, through so much turbulence, through so many ups and downs, and so many times my mother was hospitalized and had to, and he had to drive her to be hospitalized. He never left her side. He was such a good man, never once left her, was always there to support her. And he worked a lot. Mm-hmm. So he provided for her, he was loyal to her, and he worked a lot. I don't necessarily think he was very knowledgeable in her illness, because I have memory of him saying, just snap out of it. And we all know they can't just snap out of it. And, I think that she was blessed to have him in her life as long, for their entire marriage, and my father, when she passed away, like my father, met this wonderful woman, they got married, and I was like, you so deserve happiness. You so deserve this happiness that you have. And that's a little bit about my dad.
Yeah, I wondered that because, for years, for people listening and they're, have somebody, maybe a child or a sibling or, my father was the same as yours. Thankfully, my stepfather was the same. My stepfather came into our lives when I think I was 7. So he's been around for a long time, but he was just so loving and just forgiving of everything. And thankfully, he was like a gift from God. Yes. That woman could really, do some. A lot of times it was, when they fought, it was him trying to not allow her to take so many pills, and so that was like always the big fight was around George, just give me my gun. you know.
Yeah.
And so but otherwise he was just, kissed her goodnight and, would hold her hand, and he'd go and he'd work all day and then come home and make dinner for her and then clean the kitchen. And, he was just real. So thankfully they had, both of our mothers had amazing men in their lives, because I think, if they didn't, God knows what could have happened. Right? I mean,
Yep.
So, and the same thing with us. I'd always be like, us kids would be like, Dad, if you want to get a girlfriend, he's like, no, I would not do that to your mom. And we're like, well, and we're okay with it if you want. And, he never did.
Permission to be, yeah, that's great.
So I guess some people are just stronger, Michelle. I think that some people can just, I don't know if it has to do because it's a husband and wife rather than, a mom-daughter kind of thing. But so, and then is your mom still is she still alive, or is she passed?
She passed away. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You did say he remarried her. Yeah. And how was that for you when she passed?
It was an interesting sort of, I write about it in the book, the moment I found out she passed away. And I don't know, it was one of those moments that was like bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was so good at manipulating me and controlling me. And here at that point, I was like married and like living away from her, and she still controlled me and still manipulated me. So I had this little moment where I was like, she's no longer going to be able to do that to me anymore. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I felt guilty. I was like, are you seriously happy that, she's no longer here? And I wasn't, of course. I lost my mother, but at the same time, I gained like a sense of freedom and vitality to live my life without guilt and without all that pain and like worry. I worried about her. I so worried about her. So yeah, but yeah, it was hard. It was hard, and it was mixed emotions,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that guilt is the way that we live our lives, and because we do feel guilty all the time. We feel guilty that we're upset with them. We feel guilty if we can't be there enough for them. We feel guilty if it's like damn, we're just, it's a lose-lose situation, So when my mother passed, I was the same way. I felt that she was at peace, and then we could be too.
Right.
And so, I think coping with it is exactly what you and I had mentioned. It's try to, set boundaries for yourself if you're still going and dealing with something like this. To try, even if it's just, for a drink with a friend. Like when I started to really talk about the dealings with, I was out, and I'd go out with my girlfriends, and I would be so ticked at her, and I'd start telling them about what she did, and then they would start laughing because some of the stuff she did was really funny. And same with my grandma. My grandma didn't have bipolar, but she took all these pills, and and they were 2 peas in a pod, and that's even a worse thing, right? When you get 2 women that just want to sit back on the couch, pop Diet Coke and pills with each other all day. It's like so there goes my brain again. I couldn't remember what I was about to say, but and I just being able to laugh is what I was trying to, just be able to laugh and get out, even if it's, because some people be like, well, I don't want to leave them, I've been gone at work all day and I don't want to, go meet it's like, you have to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that break is so important. That mental break is so important.
It is. And then that mental break, so let's turn the corners here. That mental break is essentially why you developed your resilience program, because for companies, mental health, because what was the stat? It said what Forbes reported that 69% of employees are experiencing burnout symptoms while working from home. And so your program is to help kind of let company leaders know what their employees are potentially experiencing, right?
Exactly. And so, yeah. And honestly, we had so many people, employees were working from home, they were working around the clock. They were isolated. We're human beings wired for connection, and we were quarantined by ourselves, right? So there's a lot that has gone on over the course of this pandemic, and a lot of people are just experiencing symptoms of depression, anxiety. Something like 42% of the global workforce has experienced a decline in their mental health since the beginning of the pandemic. So that has to wake you up to just how prevalent it is in your own workforce. So, yeah, I had my clients I was working with when all of this unfolded were asking me for resilience. They were like, "Help us help our people and stay healthy, preserve their mental health, and what can they do to do that?" And so that was when my resilience program was born. And then after I was delivering it to employees, leaders were coming, company owners and HR were coming to me saying, "Help our people leaders safely have conversations with their people if they sense that they're struggling. How do they do that? They don't know how to do that. They're so afraid to say the wrong thing." So then my leader program was born. So now I have a program for employees and a program for leaders. And it's just really about helping people get comfortable talking about brain health, have them get present to their own beliefs around brain health, and then giving them daily strategies they can do to feel better, to preserve their mental health, to not let it go and leave it up to chance that they're going to feel okay. So, yeah, and I love the work. I love getting to tell my story because it helps people understand that they're not alone. And ultimately, we all need to have a better relationship to our brain.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I can't, imagine just as being like well, I'm not a business owner anymore, but you're always working, and then going to work is almost easier than staying home and working.
Yeah.
Even though some people really love it, but in regards to it's their time away from the kids. And now there's no time away from the kids, and then it's hard to separate, and they're constantly, just they're in that one spot all day, and they're not moving. I can't imagine.
Right.
Well, I love that you're doing that. So, Michelle, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you about really anything that we discussed?
Yeah, so if you're interested in seeing some of the work, I have actually 2 free webinars on people leader training. One's happening tomorrow. One is for educators. That's happening tomorrow. You can find out all about those and the future ones I'll be doing by just following me on LinkedIn, Michelle E. Dickinson on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Michelle Dickinson 71. And then my website for corporate clients and educator programs is careforyourpeople.com.
I like that. All right, girlie. Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I know. It was nice to connect with someone who gets it. So thank you, April, for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. It does. It always makes me feel better just to talk it out. So thanks so much. And thank you for watching. And I'll be talking with you later. Okay.